If you've ever felt defeated, or if you've ever had a very long, difficult journey ahead of you, or if you've ever felt regret or guilt because you know that one of the reasons the journey is hard is because, well, it's your fault, then you need the same thing that the Israelites got in Numbers chapter 15. You need a when. In Numbers chapter 15, they had just been defeated when they tried to go into the promised land and overcome the people who were there, even though God told them that it wasn't going to work. They had just heard from God before that it was going to be another 38 years before any of their families were going to be able to set foot into the promised land. So they were going to be wandering in the wilderness for a grand total of 40 years. So they had a long, difficult journey ahead of them. And they knew it was their own fault because they didn't trust. They didn't walk by faith. And so what did God give them in Numbers chapter 15? It's what he said through Moses. He went to Moses and he said, Moses, tell these defeated, discouraged, guilty individuals, when you come into the land that I will give you, the land that I will give you as your home. When? He didn't say if. There was no doubt about it in God's mind. God was still going to keep his promise. There was a word of certainty, and that's what the word when is to God. It's a word of certainty. It's going to happen. No matter how defeated they were, no matter how difficult the journey will be, and no matter how guilty they really were. He gave Israel a when. And I bet it gave them a good little pep in their step as they took their next step into the wilderness. Strength to know that there was a certain destination that the Lord was going to give them. And there is for you too. In Colossians, the book of Colossians, God gives you a when he says, when Christ, who is your life, appears, then we also will appear with him in glory. When Jesus comes back someday, your life will be glorious. That's your when. No matter how defeated you currently feel, no matter how difficult you're afraid the next part of the journey will be, no matter how guilty you are, because of Christ, who is your life by his choice. We get to hold on to him as the one thing necessary in our lives because he chose to make you the focus of his entire life. All of you, all that you are, all that you've done, all that needed to be forgiven was such a part of his life. He held on to it so tightly that he was punished for those sins. And they were buried, and you never needed to be afraid of them ever again. That's how he could guarantee that your when, your glorious when you will no longer feel defeat, when you will no longer feel discouraged, when you will no longer feel guilty about anything, is coming. And so when you do feel defeated, or when the journey looks really, really hard, when you have regret on your heart, just remember, your future is glorious. And so rest well tonight, my friends. God gave you a when.